Hi, everybody. I hope everybody's staying warm and dry and that you had a good snow day. So, tonight I want to talk to you about taking your triple entries that you started out with and turning them into body paragraphs using this acronym called Texas. So, I've made I've taken an example of your triple entries that one of your classmates has written, and I want to show you a few things that I think was really good about this triple entry, and some things that people can use in their own making of triple entries. If you haven't turned in your triple entries and haven't done some of the discussion sections, please do so. We know that's very important, and that's part of your grade, and you can't pass the class without doing those parts of your homework that are also building into your paper, which is, going to decide, if you pass the class and if you can take the portfolio, which I think is a very good idea. So anyway, this student has a few things that I think are really working well for their triple entry, and then we're going to take her triple entry and turn it into the start of a body paragraph. It's not going to be a full body paragraph, but so basically, this student used Washington and Cook for one of her examples. She says genuine skepticism in science is one of the ways that science progresses, examining assumptions and conclusions. It's on page 11. Right. So I think that's a good quote. I like that she kind of incorporates the quote into the sentence. I think that will ultimately work the best for you if you can not make the whole sentence the quote, but rather use some of your words and then bring in the important quote or the important parts of the quote within the same sentence. And note that it's not a very long quote, and I think that's not only is that fine, it's recommended that you don't use particularly long quotes because you can get a lot out of even short quotes. So then she says, one way to extinguish the denial movements is through skepticism. Skepticism brings objectivity and confirmation on actual global warming based on factual information. Good. So she's telling us a little bit about what skepticism is and what it does. I think that she could maybe explain what skepticism is first. So maybe have some sort of definition here. I think definitions for your keywords are going to be ultimately important. And then she says in her, and note it's not that long. I think 2 sentences is fine. So so what? I know I had 3 to 5 sentences, but I think you'll usually want to go at least 5 sentences for your analysis, because 3 generally doesn't cut it, and especially when they're like shorter sentences, you really need to work with the ideas that you're bringing out in your paragraph. So she says, a healthy dose of skepticism seems to cure humanity in conforming to ideas of others. Denialism is a way for people to ignore what is happening in the world, to deny responsibility for their actions as a collective whole. Skepticism breaks the cycle of people creating a habit to accept and not fight what is going on in the world. It also teaches people to develop themselves and form their own opinions, to be more independent, therefore disproving the use of denialism in the world. I think disproving is the wrong word here, maybe limiting or fighting, I say. But I really love that that she's really telling me the importance of skepticism, how that relates to denialism, which is the main point, right? I think she could connect this, like both of these parts, back to the science a little more, because the quote is really talking about science. She doesn't really mention science. I mean, global warming starts to get to the idea of science, but I want to know how science comes into play here, if she's really following this quote. Okay. So I think this is a good example of a triple entry, and I want you to focus on making your analyses longer, because that's a problem, and that's a problem for most students that I teach this triple entry format to at the beginning at least. All right, now let's go to Texas. All right, so Texas starts with the T, a topic sentence, right? So what's the main idea? I think to myself, here is what I'm going to prove to you in this paragraph, colon, for my topic sentence, okay? It doesn't have to be overly ornate. Just tell me what the main idea of your paragraph is. Here, note, she didn't write this. I wrote this, but, you know, I thought this was a kind of a way, or kind of what she was getting at. It looked like in the analysis, it had to do with how skepticism is the opposite of denialism. So here I said, skepticism is a great way of combating denialism. Short, to the point, and, you know, it's kind of the main point of what this paragraph's doing. Then for the E, you move to explanation and elaboration. So give me a little bit more beyond your topic sentence and start bringing us into the example, which here is going to be the quote. We'll get there in a second. So here I have, it helps us to think for ourselves and limits our natural biases that keep us from the truth. Then I'm going to introduce this quote and say Washington and Cook describe skepticism and its relationship to science in their article, Denial and the Nature of Science. Note, you'll want to use the name of the article the first time you bring it up, but later you could probably just say Washington and Cook and leave out the title of the article. But also note that Washington and Cook have 2 articles in this reading set. So if you're switching back and forth, you might want to tell us which article it's from. But if you're doing everything from, say, the Denial and the Nature of Science, you don't have to name the article over and over again until you bring up the other article by Washington and Cook. Okay? So, here I've explained and elaborated and kind of transitioned into the evidence part. What is the example that you're going to show me? It doesn't always have to be a quote in writing an essay. Sometimes it can be from your own personal experience. Sometimes it can be statistics, anything that's kind of helping you prove your point. But for these essays, I'm going to want you almost always to quote from the reading set in every body paragraph, because that's really part of what the readers are looking for, right? They're going to want to see that you're using the readings to help you make your point. So, well, the great thing about a triple entry is these 3 parts can almost just be copied and pasted in, right? So since I mentioned Washington and Cook before, I just say they explain that genuine skepticism, blah, 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 using the quote. And then I put the page number at the end. Note, you don't have to put Washington and Cook in the citation if you mention their name in the paragraph. Okay. And I do want you to mention their name in the paragraph so that, so like when you're talking to somebody, you don't just quote something, you say, oh, this person says X. So that's going to be really helpful, I think. Then once you have this quote, I want you to analyze the quote. That is what you're doing with your paraphrase and your so what. So I just copied and pasted in here. Note, I think, the student could do a little bit more with the paraphrase and a little bit more with the analysis, but generally it's doing pretty well. Then finally is the synthesis. So how does this analysis, how does this idea relate to your larger argument or your main thesis? Your main thesis is going to be basically telling us what your larger argument is. No, I haven't put anything in here yet because I think this student needs to, connect this to her thesis as she develops what that idea is. I know that for some of you, it's going to be kind of confusing to start doing your body paragraphs without having a solid idea of what your thesis is. And I understand that. But part of it also is that your thesis is going to say what your body paragraphs are saying, right? So, so they connect to each other very closely. So once you have an idea of what your body paragraphs are saying, then you can really start telling us what your thesis is going to be, which we're going to work on Friday. So so don't worry too much. We're going to get there, and and we'll show how these body paragraphs are connecting to your thesis. Also note that you are going to be revising your body paragraphs and revising your thesis as you build more of this essay. I think a lot of people think about writing as like starting with word number 1 at the very first sentence and then working to your way to the conclusion and then being done with it. But good writing will constantly be like revised and like fit together with what you're saying in other parts of your essay. So so we're going to be doing that as we move along in this essay process. So I have included this template in the files for our weekly assignment, and for Friday, by the end of Friday, I want you to have 3 body paragraphs. Note you can use the 3 triple entries that I've had you do, or if you want, you can use one of your discussions, or something completely new that I haven't seen at all. It's not a big deal to me. You're going to have to write all of it, all 5 pages of it by the end of our writing of this paper anyway. So whatever is useful for you. If you use your triple entries, it might be a little less work on the front end, but like I said, you have to write everything regardless. If you have any questions, email me, or even better, put it in the questions and answers thread. That way your fellow classmates can see my answers to questions that maybe they didn't know they had, or maybe they had and didn't ask me. So you're helping other people out when you ask questions in that question and answer thread. Okay. Otherwise, I hope you have a safe week. I hope it doesn't snow too much as the week goes on, and have a good night. All right.